What if I told you that the real villain in Frankenstein isn't who you think? For decades, we've only seen a bestial monster. But what if behind that tremendous force existed a tormented human mind, rejected and desperate for acceptance? Prepare to discover how loneliness can transform any being into an unstoppable force of revenge. What you're about to see will forever change your view of who really is the monster in this dark story. Victor Frankenstein's laboratory. Stormy night of 1818. Lightning cuts through the sky while an obsessed scientist stitches pieces of corpses on a cold table. But this isn't a story about uncontrolled science. It's about paternal abandonment in its cruelest form. Imagine awakening to consciousness without memories, without references, without a single moment of maternal care. Frankenstein's monster is born as a gigantic tabula rasa, with superhuman strength but the mind of a child. His first moments of life are marked not by embraces or sweet words, but by horror on his creator's face. Victor Frankenstein flees, abandons his creation like a father who rejects his own son. Here we begin to understand. This isn't a tale about a monster born evil, but about how initial rejection shapes a forming psyche. Modern neuroscience teaches us that first emotional bonds determine our capacity for empathy, our self-esteem, and our understanding of the world. The monster is born without these essential bonds. He is literally a cosmic orphan, without father, mother, family, or species. In the first days, he wanders through forests, observing nature with childlike curiosity, discovers fire, pain, cold. Each experience is a brutal and solitary learning. There's no one to explain the world, to offer comfort when he gets hurt or confused. Developmental psychology shows us that abandoned children develop specific patterns: hypervigilance, difficulty forming bonds, and mainly, deep rage against those who should have offered protection. But there was something no one saw coming. Exceptional intelligence was developing in that rejected mind. The moment of true rupture didn't come with violence, but with destroyed hope. Hidden in the shadows, the monster discovers a peasant family, the de Lacys. For months, he observes through a crack in the wall their daily rituals: conversations by the fire, shared meals, gestures of affection. Here emerges a crucial element. He isn't a predator spying on prey. He's an orphan child, observing what he never had: a family. He learns language by listening to their conversations, develops empathy by seeing their joys and sorrows. In secret, he helps the family, cuts wood, clears snow, leaves food. During this period, the monster discovers literature, reads Milton's Paradise Lost, and identifies with the demon banished from heaven. Reads The Sorrows of Young Werther and learns about romantic love. Each book is a window into emotions he feels, but doesn't fully understand. Psychology teaches us about vicarious learning, how we develop behaviors by observing others. The monster is doing this at accelerated speed, building a personality based on stolen fragments of humanity. Then comes the devastating moment. He decides to reveal himself to the family's blind patriarch, believing that physical blindness will allow the man to see beyond his monstrous appearance. The initial conversation is promising. The old man shows compassion, offers friendship. But when the other family members return and see the monster, they react with absolute terror. They beat him, expel him with screams of horror. The family flees, abandons the house, prefers to lose everything rather than share the world with him. This is the definitive trauma. Not just rejection, but betrayal of his deepest expectations. Trauma psychology shows us that episodes where our vulnerability is attacked create deep emotional wounds. The monster had exposed himself completely, offered his true gentle nature, only to be brutally rejected. And it was there that everything began to crumble. Hope died, and something much darker was born in its place. The transformation isn't instantaneous. It's calculated. After the de Lacy family's rejection, the monster doesn't explode in blind fury. Instead, his superior mind begins a cold process of reanalyzing the world. "I am malicious because I am miserable," he declares. This phrase reveals deep psychological understanding. He recognizes that his evil is reactive, not innate. It's a rational response to a world that systematically rejects him. Neuroscience shows us how repeated traumas alter brain structure. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for empathy and moral control, can be literally turned off when the limbic system, primitive emotions, takes control. The monster is experiencing this transformation in real time. He develops his own moral system, inverted. If society considers him monstrous regardless of his actions, then being truly monstrous becomes a form of honesty. It's disturbing logic, but internally consistent. He begins studying Victor Frankenstein obsessively, discovers his diary, learns about his creation. Here a terrible understanding is born. He isn't just rejected by chance, but was consciously abandoned by the one who should love him unconditionally. Family psychology teaches us about paternal abandonment wounds, how a father's rejection creates adults with extreme need for validation or, at the opposite extreme, with desire for revenge against authority figures. The monster chooses revenge, but not just any revenge. He plans to systematically destroy everything Victor loves. It's not gratuitous cruelty. It's a distorted form of communication. "If you cannot love me," his logic says, "then you will feel the pain I feel." He develops predator patience, strategic intelligence, learns Victor's habits, maps his relationships, identifies his weak points. Every move is calculated to maximize his creator's psychological suffering. Psychological literature describes this pattern in cases of acquired psychopathy, when extreme traumas create behaviors that simulate clinical psychopathy, but are actually extreme defense mechanisms. But the true monster was still dormant, because until now, his revenge had moral limits. The moment of total transgression comes with an apparently simple proposal: create a companion for me. The monster doesn't ask for wealth, power, or immediate revenge. He asks only for what all living beings desire: someone to love and be loved by. This demand reveals the tragic depth of his character. Even after all rejection, he still believes romantic companionship can cure him. It's a desperate plea from someone who understands his own loneliness as the source of his evil. Victor initially agrees, moved by guilt and fear. But then, in a fatal decision, he destroys the half-created female. His reasoning? He fears that two monsters together would create a race of demons. Here we see prejudice in its purest form. Victor assumes that creatures like his son are inherently evil, incapable of redemption or happiness. He denies the monster the only possibility of cure: connection with an equal. Psychology teaches us about self-fulfilling prophecy, how treating someone as inherently evil can effectively create that behavior. Victor is literally creating the demon he fears. For the monster, this is the final betrayal. Not only was he abandoned at birth, not only rejected by society, but now he's prevented even from finding companionship with his own kind. Victor chooses to condemn two creatures to eternal loneliness to protect a humanity that never showed compassion. It's at this moment that the monster crosses the point of no return. His declaration is chilling: "I shall be with you on your wedding night." Not a vague threat, but a specific commitment to destroy the romantic happiness that was denied to him. The psychological difference is crucial. Before, his revenge was reactive and chaotic. Now it becomes systematic and symbolic. He will destroy exactly what Victor tried to deny him: romantic love. The moral question becomes complex. Is Victor protecting humanity or perpetuating a cycle of rejection that guarantees monstrosity? Does the monster have the right to companionship? Is his request reasonable? And here emerges the disturbing dilemma. What if he's right? What if Victor is the true villain of this story? Let's dive into the monster's mind through the lens of modern psychology. What we find isn't madness, but cold and terrifying logic. First, let's analyze his victim pattern. He doesn't kill randomly. He chooses people close to Victor, starting with William, the youngest brother. In psychological terms, he's creating a mirror of suffering. Victor must feel the loss of a loved one, just as the monster feels his own rejection. Trauma studies show that abandonment victims frequently develop reverse empathy, the ability to inflict on others exactly the type of pain they experienced. It's not gratuitous sadism, it's a desperate attempt at emotional communication. The choice of Justine as scapegoat reveals Machiavellian intelligence. He understands social prejudices and manipulates them, knowing a servant will be easily blamed. He demonstrates sophisticated understanding of power dynamics and social injustice. Neuroscientists have studied similar cases. Individuals with extreme abandonment trauma develop hypersocial cognition. They become exceptionally skilled at reading people and situations, but use this ability to manipulate instead of connect. Compare with real cases. Ted Bundy was known for his exceptional intelligence and ability to manipulate social perceptions. Jeffrey Dahmer described his acts as desperate attempts to create permanent connection with other people. Both suffered abandonment trauma in childhood. The monster follows identifiable psychological patterns, but amplified by his physical strength and superior intelligence. He is essentially a case study in acquired psychopathy, destructive behaviors, developed as rational response to impossible circumstances. His eloquence is particularly disturbing. He's not a mindless brute, but a philosopher of pain. He articulates his motives with Shakespearean clarity. Crime and vice are discoveries forced upon me by the injustice of mankind. Psychological literature documents this phenomenon. Highly intelligent individuals who suffer extreme trauma frequently develop sophisticated narratives to justify destructive behaviors. It's not simple rationalization, it's complete reconstruction of moral systems. It wasn't madness. It was cold calculation executed by a mind that learned emotional survival requires the destruction of those who rejected it. In the end, Victor and the monster become distorted reflections of each other, creator and creation trapped in a macabre dance of mutual obsession. When Victor perishes in the Arctic pursuit, the monster doesn't celebrate. Instead, he mourns over his creator's body with genuine sadness. This final reaction reveals the central tragedy. The monster never wanted to be a villain. He wanted to be a son. All his destruction was a desperate attempt to force Victor to pay attention, to recognize his paternal responsibility. It's an extreme case of negative attention seeking, preferring hatred to indifference. My work is nearly complete, he declares, planning to destroy himself after Victor's death. Without his creator, without purpose for his rage, existence loses meaning. It's deeply revealing that even his revenge was, at bottom, a distorted form of connection. The psychological legacy of this narrative resonates through the centuries. Mary Shelley, consciously or not, created the first detailed literary portrait of abandonment trauma and its consequences. Decades before Freud, she explored how paternal neglect can create monstrosity. Real cases validate her intuition. Longitudinal studies show that abandoned children have significantly higher rates of antisocial behavior. Intervention programs focus specifically on creating substitute bonds to prevent these destructive trajectories. The moral question remains: to what extent are we responsible for the monsters we create through our rejection? The society that ostracizes based on appearance, families that abandon different children, systems that fail to protect the vulnerable, all participate in creating their own threats. The monster also represents our fears about uncontrolled technology, but on a deeper layer represents our terror of being ourselves rejected, abandoned, considered monstrous by others. Each of us carries the potential to be both Victor and the monster. Philosophically, the story forces an uncomfortable question. Does truly innate evil exist? Or is all monstrosity a response to circumstances? The monster argues eloquently that his nature is a product of treatment received, not inherent design. But perhaps, he wasn't the last. In every rejected child, every individual ostracized for differences, every person that society considers monstrous without knowing their story, the pattern can repeat. The true lesson of Frankenstein isn't about the dangers of science, but about the responsibilities of compassion. In the end, we discover there isn't one monster in Frankenstein. There are two broken beings trapped in a cycle of rejection and revenge. Victor, who abandons his responsibility. The monster, who transforms pain into destruction. But the true horror isn't in the creature or creator ... It's in the mirror. How many monsters do we create daily with our indifference? The question that remains is simple and haunting. Who is the true monster? And when was the last time you looked in the mirror?